Rory from Powerball, and today I'd like to give you a quick tutorial on how to finger start your cord started Powerball. There are two types of Powerball. There's an auto start version, which have little black tracks here in the middle of the rotor. There's a spring inside there. Basically what you're doing is you're winding the rotor back against the spring, releasing, and off you go. Very handy. And then you have the traditional type of Powerball, the one that needs a cord. You wrap the little red cord. You put the tip of the cord into a hole in the rotor. You wrap it around a couple of turns, give it a tug, and off you go. That's grand. If you have the cord handy and you're happy enough to spend the 10 seconds winding it up each time, no big deal. But it becomes so much easier to use this product when you're able to just give it a quick flick and off you go. I've been doing this for years, so it's actually quite easy to do. And for yourself, once you've done it a couple of times, you'll find it's a piece of cake. And as I say again, it means you can take your Powerball anywhere. You don't need the cord. The cat won't eat the cord, by the way. Loads of cats. We get lots of emails from people saying my cat has eaten my cord, can I have a spare cord? It's a pain. So being able to finger start the ball, happy days. You're going to be able to get so much more use out of the product and enjoy it more. So look, like everything, there's a little bit of a technique involved, but it's actually very, very straightforward. I'm left-handed, but just showing how easy this is. I put the ball into my right hand, and with the same thumb, same hand, basically, you can get it spinning. So it doesn't really need that much pressure. It's just more about, I guess, getting the rotor spinning at the correct speed at the start. I prefer to do it where I keep the actual ball facing up the whole time. Some people actually will give it a flick, and then they'll turn their hand around and they'll go on from there. But I find, especially at the start, until you're actually getting the coordination right, it's so much easier. You can do actually so much more agitation of the ball, for want of a better word, if you actually have it facing up. Just imagine there was a laser beam pointing out of the center of the rotor here, coming straight up out of the ball and facing up into the ceiling. Well, the technique is, what you're wanting to do is you want to agitate or vary the movement of the ball so that you're drawing or tracing a big, wide circle with that laser beam up in the ceiling. That's kind of a crude way to describe it, but that's exactly what you want to do. So once the actual rotor is spinning, I'm actually twisting and tilting my wrist, my fingers, so I'm drawing big, consistent, wide, lazy circles up on the ceiling with that laser beam. I'm not, it's not kind of jagged, it's fluid. Nice, fluid, round rotation of the actual wrist. The arm never moves, the arm is always steady. And here's the other key. You got to get plenty of momentum on that rotor. This is what happens with Powerball when you spin it. When you wind the rope around the actual rotor and you tug it, the ball spins on what we call the x-axis. There it is, spinning on its x-axis right there. No big deal. But once you give sufficient speed to the x-axis, as in now, you'll notice that the ball also starts to spin on its y-axis. It's like the hands of a clock, it goes round basically. So it's spinning this way, but when you get it spinning fast enough, you'll see it'll actually spin in its second axis. And for those of you who are familiar with Powerball already from string starting it, you'll know that that the faster it goes around its y-axis, like the hands of the clock, the faster it'll go around its x-axis. This is a principle of gyroscopic precession. So the faster we're getting that guy to go on its y-axis, the faster it'll go on its x-axis. So that is the principle. But the key is, it won't spin on its x-axis, it's on its y-axis, unless you give it enough speed on its x-axis. When you give it enough speed on its x-axis, it'll actually start to float inside. It's the weirdest thing. The actual rotor will start floating inside in the ball. That's the gyroscopic precession bit. It's the weird thing about gyroscopes. It'll start to levitate inside in the actual shell. And as a result, it'll react when you turn your wrist like this. and it'll start spinning faster in its y-axis. I hope I'm not confusing with all this x and y stuff. It's just, I suppose it's an easy way to say it. It spins in 2 directions, this way and that way. So as I say, I'm left-handed, so we're going to do this with the left hand. I use my middle finger. That's not being rude. You give it a good flick and off you go. When I say give it a good flick, you don't just glance it casually across the surface, because if you do, it'll move slightly in its y-axis, but it won't be moving sufficiently. I actually press down, give it a right good flick, basically. And you know you've done it right if, as well as spinning on its x-axis, it starts to spin on its y-axis. That's the key. If it doesn't start spinning on its y-axis after that flick, you're at nothing. All the wrist movement in the world, nothing happens. It just dies. So again, a good little flick. The ball is now floating inside in the shell. Sorry, the rotor is now floating inside the shell, and it's now in a position to react to your wrist movement. That's all it is, and it doesn't really matter what way you do it. If you like, okay, if you want to follow what I'm doing, you know, with my laser beam analogy, grand. If you don't, you can turn your wrist around, or it doesn't matter. You can either do that. Once you've actually given that ball, that rotor, sufficient speed with your flick to get it spinning in both directions or both axes, then you can do what you like with it. You can do that, this, whatever you want to do. Basically, it'll start. If you don't give it sufficient speed with that flick, it'll do nothing. And again, just to see how easy it is, I'm holding it with my sort of unfavored hand. Give it a little flick with the thumb. No, that didn't work so well there. Give it a flick with the thumb, and off we go. Now that's kind of difficult to do. You want to be pretty accomplished to sort of to feel the rotations required to get that spinning at such a slow speed. But the point is, it's just an illustration showing that you don't need brute force and ignorance to get this to work. Nice little flick, and off you go. Nice little flick, and off you go. Key is in that flick, getting the sufficient speed so it'll start spinning on both its x and y axis. You get that right, you're in business. The tricky part, of course, is actually explaining this in a video. Unless you have a Powerball in your hand, you know, you're going to look and say, well, that looks easy. It is easy, but it's like getting that hula hoop going the first time. You got to get in sync with that rotor that it's spinning, because, you know, I know how to feel the ball because I'm used to these things for years. But if you're not in sync, the ball will just die, and you're there. You know, you can flick it as hard as you like. You got to be in sync as you start rotating your wrist. If you don't, you're goosed. So I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you're already proficient with the chord start technique and you're well able to use Powerball. One little tip is to actually get the ball started with the chord first, and then practice slowing down the actual spin. Try and keep the ball rotating at a really, really slow spin speed for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. Get the actual feeling that's required of handling and mastering the ball when it's at such a slow speed. If you can do that, then you'll have no trouble finger starting this product, because as you can see, what I'm doing is just barely agitating it and keeping with the intention of spinning. The important one here is the y-axis. As I say, that's the key. If you can get that ball to keep spinning on its y-axis, then you'll keep it spinning indefinitely. And as you can see, there's only tiny little movements required. I'm barely moving my hand, and yet I'm still managing to get it to spin. And when you master that, as I say, you'll have absolutely no trouble whatsoever managing the finger start technique. And again, it's not so easy to do it this way, but it's certainly very easy to do it that way. Another little analogy that people say is, imagine if you have a wine glass and you're holding the actual glass by the base, and the stem is there and the thing is, the actual body of the glass is above, and all you're doing is you're trying to get the wine to swirl around the bottom of the glass. That's exactly what you're doing here. There's a combination of finger and wrist movements together. Whether you're using the laser beam analogy, the wine glass analogy, whatever you're going to use, get the ball spinning on both its X and its Y axis, and happy days, you'll be spinning without the cord in a flash. And as you can see, piece of cake. It doesn't need a lot. We're going to put this video back up on powerballs.com/start. That's where we put all these videos. If you want any assistance, or if you have any questions, send me an email to help@powerballs.com, and we will be very pleased to hear from you. Actually, if you wanted to even send your own videos showing your own flick start technique, we're going to do that shortly. Actually, we're going to put a compilation of users' finger start techniques together. They're there on YouTube already. I'm hoping this one, it's probably one of the longest ones, but I'm hoping this is going to be the definitive one, because, as I say, it's something that people get very frustrated with. How do I finger start my Powerball? That's my guide on how to do it. I hope I've been sufficiently clear and have explained myself well. Again, help@powerballs.com, powerballs.com/start. Keep in touch, and thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it useful.